So here we are, the ace game. It's the first series of the evening and already we're seeing just how close this tournament can get. It's a stacked bracket, 600 euros on the line, and spawning to the lower left hand position. We've got the pink Zerg player representing Vega Squadron, JonnyREcco. And to the top right, his opponent, the blue Protoss, first. First, going ultra aggressive game number 1 with a big investment in a cannon rush. Didn't work out for him too well, so game number 2, he went for a bit more of a normal build, but also a quite interesting timing. He went for an early Nexus off a Gateway Expand into a Stargate. He got some Phoenix out, but behind the Phoenix he started warping in Zealots, all sneaky from a proxy pylon, marched in with 10 of them, and destroyed Rico's third. From that point on, it was just a real ramp up. First followed that pressure up with more Phoenix harassment, and then a big Gateway 2 Colossus Immortal push, and it was scary. It was devastating, and it won first that game, leveled out this series, and got us here. Rico needs to be very cautious this game. Tries to identify any further pressure like that could be coming in. Slightly less common builds that maybe he isn't as frequently used to seeing. First, on the other hand though, I don't believe he's played Rico that many times. I don't know definitely about that. I didn't check before we went live, but he's gonna obviously may not know as much about Rico, may not know his playstyles, his different timings, and Johnny is certainly a player who's able to throw out the unexpected now. There was a time back at the end of Wings of Liberty where Rico was an incredibly predictable Zerg. He would always just macro up and go for the late game. But since, well, probably since about the last 6 months, he's been a lot more confident in throwing down aggression, going for risks, going for the slightly more unusual builds, and it's really paying off for him. First, he's getting greedy though this game. Went for a Nexus first opening. It's about to get discovered by Rico as he moves in, sees that Nexus incredibly early, but it's already been responded to with a hatch pull build. So it's not going to give either player a massive advantage. Obviously, hatch pull up against the Gateway Expand can quite often be an incredibly good opening. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out up against the Nexus first. Rico, of course, will have the added production, the added base as early as possible, and there's very little over on first side that he can do to punish this. All of his tech is a bit delayed from the Nexus first, his production delayed. Just going to have a good economy. Could go for a very powerful 2-base play, but we've got to wait and see if that is what he's got planned. Overlord just checking through, sees pretty much everything at the moment, knows about the Gateway, knows about the Cybercore, but that's to be expected. More importantly are the gases, sees both of them taken. Something to be aware of when these gases are coming down, because the earlier they are, obviously the quicker rush into tech the Protoss is looking for. And reflecting on game number 2, we saw first grab down those 2 gases very early. He was looking to get the quick Stargate. Triple Queen production en route, so Rico aiming to get, obviously, those Queens injecting nice and quick. We should see him go up to about 4, maybe even 5, just to get the creep spread on its way too, because that's one of the vulnerabilities of getting this third so early, is the creep spread is not going to be over to it yet, which means getting reinforcements and getting your army in position can be quite a challenge. Back at first side, Forge on its way, so a nice early upgrade going to be coming in here. Note where it is as well. Bang in the middle of the main base. Going to be quite hard to scout this because obviously Overlords tend to try and come in and look around the back, or they come in around from this side to check over in this area. But instead, being right in the center, the Overlord, knowing that a pylon is positioned there, may actually go and check. Could just think that's a pylon just to see if an Overlord's moving in, ready to intercept those. So for the moment, the Forge hasn't been seen. Instead, we've got just a Stalker, a Zealot, and a Sentry waiting patiently out the front with double additional gates coming, and +1 ground weapons on its way. Rico, with a handful of Zerglings, is content just to add in a few more drones, but is still being cautious. Additionally, 6 more Lings joining the 6 already on the map, taking us to 12, looking to just poke, just prod, see what kind of army is coming, and not get caught with his pants around his ankles. Wants to make sure that any pressure that could be coming similar to game number 2 will have a response. And that's because of just how integral the third base of a Zerg is at the early stages. If that falls up against the Protoss who's happy on 2 bases, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you can't deal some kind of big blowback. And generally speaking, as a Zerg, you can't level that back out. Killing the third is always the aim of a 2-base Protoss all-in, at minimum. That's when it becomes incredibly successful. First though, he's not looking for a 2-base all-in. He's grabbing his third Nexus. Not insanely early, 8 minutes is a relatively normal timing, but REcco has a huge swell of speedlings. 24 on the map, and with only 8 sentries, a Zealot and a Stalker to defend, could have a little bit of difficulty doing that. Few lings chipping away, trying to draw the attention of first over to those Zerglings. With the cannon there, they'll be okay, but with so many sentries at this third base, it's going to be quite hard to do anything about this. May force a cancel on one of these gateways, which is mildly annoying, but overall, nothing too exceptional cause there. 2 more gates coming in, +1 ground weapons is finished on the Protoss side. Meanwhile, REcco adding in his Lair and Rotoron, plus the melee attack upgrades. So this could be a rush up into Ultralisks, Ultra Infester, and again, a less common strategy that can work very well. But really the only reason you see the 1-1 melee attack is if you're going to be going for a very ling heavy mid game in order to go Infester Ultralisk late game. The concern is though, this army from first is moving across the map. It's trying to get into a dominating position, and being so sentry heavy with a lot of force fields, first does actually have an engagement position where we can look to just zone out most of these lings and work them down. If the force fields are good, this force is very scary. If they aren't though, it is very vulnerable. But with the Mothership Core, with the 200 energy, they can always just mass recall out. 3 force fields go down, a couple of lings have already died, 20 in total, which is actually quite sizable. And REcco now identifying that he could be in some trouble, adding in some Hydralisks, just beefing up the damage output, and with 3 spines already at this third, he's ready to try and stop this. Lings getting blocked up by the Queens, actually not able to engage, a couple flanking from behind, but the majority of the Zergling army not able to get up close and personal with the Stalkers, despite the force fields not really incanting that much. Drones getting pulled as well, Hydralisks coming on through. The damage is not being done massively yet, but the army for Zerg is starting to look a little bit thin on the ground. The Protoss force though also heavily damaged, these spines working through nicely, and with the Hydras coming and the drone buffer, first should have to back away. He doesn't really have enough here at the moment in order to push in. Now he knows the Hydras are in position. Back at home, first adding in the robotics facility, preparing to continue his tech up in towards those Colossus. 5 more Hydras being produced. We've got obviously the 1-1 upgrades compared to 1-0 upgrades, but only the Lings benefit from those. So actually the Zerglings in this composition are being quite the large damage dealers as well as the big tanky units. The Lair just being utilised for groove spines on the Hydralisks for now. REcco happy to stay on this Ling Hydra force, knowing that he doesn't have to contend with any splash damage yet. He's only seen gateway units, and Ling Hydra is incredibly effective up against that form of composition. A handful of Zerglings will get trapped, thanks to some good force fields from first there, but REcco, he can afford to throw away a couple of Lings, being up at 65 drones. May not be ideal, but he's already lost 14, so gonna just try and resupply those as he gets the opportunity to. He's banking a lot of gas for now, so has pulled gas out of the 5th and 6th geysers in order to maximize that mineral income. The robotics bay for first is coming down as well, so he's gonna be looking to get up into that Colossus production. Also throwing down the Twilight Council due to 1-1 being complete. He needs that at the very least in order to get 2-2 down. May look for Zealot Charge as well, just to try and deal with these Zerglings a bit better. May look for Blink if he is expecting some kind of tech late game. But between this, it's a fairly normal game. We've got the Spire coming down as well now for REcco. He's just keeping everything in check. He knows what his plan is. And this Spire is not going to be the Ultra Infester style I expected, but instead it's going to be probably looking for a Mutatech switch. However, gets scouted pretty damn early, only 30 seconds later than it possibly could have done. So first has had plenty of time to try and get this information and prepare as best he can. It'll be interesting to see what he does, because knowing that this Spire is coming down, he knows that Corruptors are a possibility. I don't believe that REcco has actually seen any of the robotics bait tech yet, so he's just expecting it as a response to his Ling Hydra Force. But Corruptors will fare quite well. Maybe not as well as Vipers, some people would argue, but still very, very strong. And then there's also the threat of the big Mutalisk tech switch. And that's something that can catch a lot of Protoss players off guard if it does hit unexpectedly. But as the Spire's been scouted, first, prepared adds in the double Stargate, ready to start the double Phoenix production if he even gets a whiff of a couple of Mutalisks coming through. So at the moment, REcco and First relatively balanced out. Their work accounts incredibly similar. That'll favour First, especially as he moves in. Should be able to get the kill on this gold base. Force the cancel, as there's not really much REcco can do to try and stop that dying. He has a 4th down to the bottom right though, so that was an expendable base. He didn't desperately need it. It was more of a nice to have, especially when REcco is aware that his opponent hasn't yet taken a 4th, thanks to these Zerglings just sitting about. First, utilising the corridor to the right of the map, going to be able to just block it up, prevent too many units getting a surround on him, and will be able to get the kill on the 4th base. This is a nice pick-up, and with the Mothership Core there, a mass recall out could definitely be on the cards. Doesn't have to take the engagement if he doesn't want it. Out he goes, and I think that's a really good call. He's dealt good damage to REcco, forcing him back to equal bases. By doing that, and recalling out, he doesn't lose too much. One lone Colossus is making a perilous journey back across the map. How that didn't die, I will never know, but managing to survive, that's a pretty big win actually. He got left behind in the mass recall. Protoss also agree never leave a man behind, but they do not care about Colossi. So, no 4th base yet from First. REcco pretty much maxed out, adding in a couple of Mutalisks more, going to take his total count up to 12. That's not a super scary amount, but it's just starting to look a little bit vulnerable. Meanwhile, First goes for a couple of Void Rays. He wants to try and stop those Corruptors as soon as he possibly can. Get those Prismatic Alignments triggering, get that big damage against Armored out. With 3 Colossi, this is an intimidating force. And REcco knows that. He's very much aware that any engagement he takes has to be on his terms. His Corruptors, his Mutors, they need to do well. And they've actually separated off to go and try and take out the main base. In case there were any Phoenix in position, the Corruptors are coming too, just acting as the bodyguards. And First is taking a decent bit of fire here. His response, warp in a couple of defensive Stalkers to which the Corruptors can do very little to help. But with so few Mutors, these Stalkers should be more than enough to try and stop this. The corruption will come down, and First moved out to base race, but unfortunately Lings coming through. They're going to just rampage through that 3rd mineral line. The Corruptors will help take out the remainder of those Phoenix, but the Muta count a lot lower. First going full on for the counter attack now, gonna try for the base race. A lot of Spine Crawlers in position here, but the Colossi, the Void Rays, they're gonna help substantially to try and stop this. The Lings, the Hydras, they're tearing stuff apart. In the main base, the Mutas have been stopped. This is gonna be pretty close with 15 more Mutalisks coming through. It's going to be an interesting trade. The Corruptors coming back home, they're going to be trying to target down those Colossus, trying to prevent them from getting too much damage down. Mass Recall did actually come through, leaving only a handful of units just to try and pick this away. So it does take down the Natural, does take down a lot of those Spines, but these Stalkers gunning for the Spire should be able to get it actually, and this is a nice takedown. It means that there is not a chance for any more Mutalisks to be made. REcco pulling back everything, but attacking with his air army, focusing down a lot of these probes, and First is really lacking in terms of the probe count. 23 probes, so while he's taken out the natural base of REcco, due to his 4th, due to his main, still doing alright. Actually, this is still anyone's game. The army supplies are pretty much level, but that will favour First. He's got a much more expensive army per supply. He's got, obviously, those Colossi, the Void Rays in there. It's scary stuff. The Muta's still getting some good damage down. There's a substantial number more in this engagement. They're tearing apart a couple of Stalkers back at home. But First's main army, it's heading down to the bottom right. Once that 4th base dead and gone, the 4 Stalkers are able to take out the Hydra Den, and that means that only Zerglings are really producible from the Zerg at the moment. His 3rd base is taking more damage, First pushing through, going ultra aggressive. The Hydra's ready to counter-attack as well. Mutalisks are the best unit for base racing. First knows that he has to end this game though. Tries to recall back. Wants to defend against these Hydras because the Hydras are going to be good in a base race. They'll take down a lot of units, but quite a few of the Hydralisks will end up dying. The fourth is not known about yet, but these Hydras may discover it. Or not. Mutalisks trying to back away. Rico is in a very rough spot now. Even though he's got the 25 drones, his main base is mined out. His natural third and fourth have all been killed. And standing army-wise, first is now up. Rico put a lot of pressure on. He did go for that base race, but he just baited first to go full-on aggressive mode. And with this army composition, I don't think Rico is gonna be able to engage upon this. Unless, of course, we see these mutas do a substantial more damage. There's only 13 of them, though. So the mutas do need to be careful. There's only 12 now. One just died. Heard its squelching death sound. Lings and Hydras ready to move in here. A couple of sentries in position, but it's the Stalkers laying chase. The Corruptors can certainly do a lot of damage up against the Colossus, and if they can take them down, that'd be a nice little win. But unfortunately, the Voidways encounter the Corruptors and will get the kill there. The Mutas, the Hydras, they're checking around. They're looking to get some more damage, if at all possible. As they move in, they start taking down these Stalkers. The Hydras helping well. Corruptors coming from behind. They're gunning for the Colossi. They've got to take him down fast, though. Hydra's dying left, right, and center. First is coming off a lot better in this fight. Gratz first takes this series 2-1 and will advance forward into the quarterfinals.